Hi, Peanut. I'm gonna need you to come with me right now.
Look, lady, I'm not interested.
All right, well, I'm sort of on the tick-tick, so upsy daisy.
It's so exciting to see so many of these characters back in the MCU. It all feels like everybody's coming home. Everybody's in one place.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
How were you approached about reprising your role as Pyro again? Because it's been a long time.
It's been almost 20 years. I thought that Pyro was that was the end of him. You know, he got headbutted by Iceman in X-Men 3, and that was the end. Yeah, I was very surprised when suddenly MCU was sniffing around and calling my agent and checking availability, and nobody knew what it was for because they're very secretive. And then finally, I hopped on the phone with Shawn Levy, and I obviously knew he was going to be the director of Deadpool 3, so I figured out what was going on, and he said, yes, you're right, and we want to resurrect Pyro and bring him back. And would you be interested in that? And I said, hell yes.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Sean, who is such a unique director, and he also just seems like a really great guy in general.
He is. He's a prince. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your experience like working with him on this movie?
He was fantastic. The incredible thing is the style in which they were able to tell this story, in which he was able to direct this movie. It's an enormous film. Just hugely ambitious, so many moving pieces. Sean was part director and part ringmaster, just organizing all of these moving pieces, and like so much preparation has to be done, so much planning, everything has to happen exactly when it's supposed to happen. And yet within that sort of rigid structure, I'm sure you've heard, Ryan Reynolds famously is extremely improvisational, and likes to work, in a very sort of loose, in the moment fashion. And the fact that Sean was able to direct a movie that demanded the kind of precision that it did, and still be able to leave like all this leeway to do whatever people wanted to do in the moment, it really was amazing. And there was a ton of that. We would start shooting a scene and yell cut, and run over from wherever he happened to be 500 feet away in the giant death arena that that we had, and try this now. Let's try this line, or you have anything you want to do? Let's do it this way. Let's have fun. Let's play with it, play with that, and then we were really able to find things in the moment. And when people watch, they feel it. You can tell when something is a real moment. You can tell when something's spontaneous. You can tell when something just sort of happens, and it's a precious gem. That's a unique thing that's difficult to get, and particularly difficult to get on a movie this big. So it was, he's extraordinary.
It sounds so liberating as an actor, though, to be able to kind of have that much control over your own character and be able to work with a director like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, to be allowed, to be allowed to contribute. I certainly wouldn't say that I had total control over Pyro. It's such a collaborative thing, especially because it's pre-existing IP. Pyro is a pre-existing character. You do have to operate within the bounds of that. But again, for a project this big, for a property this enormous, yes, to be able to contribute and play and put a little bit of your own voice into it and a little bit of your own stamp on it, it's very, very cool.
So when you got back into the groove of this character, you're getting on set, you're in the costume and everything, which, by the way, that looked amazing from what we see.
Costume's great, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
I've been talking about that, but I don't know if you're familiar with the old X-Men films, but
yeah,
Pyro never had a he didn't have a real costume, so in X-Men 2, the Professor X's school gets raided by a SWAT team. They run out in the middle of the night, so he's in his pajamas for the whole movie.
Yeah.
And in X3, it's more like it's like a Hot Topic ensemble that he's wearing. In Deadpool, he has a god-honest superhero costume taken from the comic books, from the Ultimate X-Men so to actually be able to step into that, when I went in for the first fitting, I was like, got a proper costume. All right,
Mhm.
I like this, and it's had very solid feel to it, and yeah, it felt good.
It was amazing to see. I mean, and so when you were on set, was it kind of like riding a bike again? Like everything was coming back to you playing this character, or was it like an entirely new experience you had to learn being
Yeah,
in shoes?
yeah, both. The character certainly came right back. It was also an entirely different experience, because Deadpool. I mean, look, in my opinion, like Deadpool's basically it's a comedy.
Mhm.
It's basically a satire. And in this particular movie, there's a lot of hard hitting emotion as well. So it's a nice little mix. It's a nice amalgam. But the tone of the movie, in my opinion, the tone of the movie is so different from the X-Men films I did. It demanded an entire, a whole different skill set, basically. So I had to sort of strike that balance between making sure that I was bringing that character that people recognized from the old movies, but also existing within this world that's even more heightened, and even more meta and self-aware and self-mocking, the way the Deadpool movies are. So yeah, there was a piece of that old riding a bike, getting right back into the Pyro character, but also making adjustments for this very different world that he exists in.
And I don't know if you've seen the reactions to the trailers, but people are really excited for you to be back in this
That's
movie.
good. I love it, man. I'm so happy to hear it. And I have seen, like, a little bit of online chatter, and like it really warms my heart that people even remember Pyro. It was a long time ago, like 20 years ago. So like the
I mean,
fact that
people,
people,
yeah, people love the X-Men movies and they love
yeah,
when, the original cast like get to play their characters again in these movies.
it's warmed my heart, absolutely, and I'm thrilled that they're excited, and believe me, they're gonna love what they see.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. But the production of superhero films in general have really changed dramatically
Mhm.
since the original days of like the original X-Men. On set, what were the major differences you found, filming a movie in the MCU versus what you did with the original trilogy?
Yeah, it's really different. It's been such an evolution, I think, from the original films that I did. I think honestly, what struck me most doing Deadpool 3 was just the sheer scale of it and the ambition of it. And X2 and X3, they were enormous movies, at the time. And to me, the scale of them was extraordinary. And coming into Deadpool 3, which is, not only now have we evolved, the MCU, which did not exist at the time I did those old movies, not only has that just evolved in general, but the ambition of Deadpool 3, they want this to be the goal is for this to be like the biggest movie of all time.
Mhm.
That's what they're going for. And believe me, when you got to set, you felt that. They built out all the sets I was on. They were built out completely. There wasn't really much of a green screen element. There were little pieces here and there they would fill in, but like they built these sets practically. So just walking onto this, set with you've seen them in the trailer, so I can mention them a little bit. The Death Arena and like the desert wasteland. When I got driven onto these sets, I just suddenly stepped into this incredibly expansive, enormous, fantasy universe, and it was just incredible.
I mean, it really looks like it pays off in the trailer, so I'm assuming it's only going to get better with the movie.
I would think.
But I know you can't give much away because Marvel is always looking out for spoilers. What can you say, what fans should expect from Pyro's story in this movie?
I'm very, very hamstrung, so there's not much I can say, and that's for everyone's own protection, right? We don't want to spoil things for
Exactly.
people. We don't want to ruin their good time. But what I can say, is for Pyro fans who are excited to see him, you will not be disappointed. This is the same character that you know and love, with all kinds of new twists, and he's been through a whole life since you last saw him in X2. So the character has been deepened even more and altered to sort of fit within the Deadpool universe, which makes him tons of fun. They won't be disappointed. They're gonna dig it.
And I don't know if you know about this, but there's kind of this debate nowadays about something called superhero fatigue. People say they're tired of superhero movies, but then something like Deadpool and Wolverine comes up and people are all of a sudden excited again. I wanted to know what your opinion was of superhero fatigue in the entertainment industry and what you think about that.
I think it depends entirely on the movie. I think you just have to take it on a case by case basis. And I think there have been movies that have come out. I think anytime that many movies are being made, something, you're gonna have movies that end up not appealing to everybody. But I do think it's case by case, and in the specific case of Deadpool, and I'm also just going off of the reactions that I have seen to it amongst my own friends and family, and also just everywhere online. There's no fatigue when it comes to Deadpool. That is certain. People are very, very excited to see this. And I know that I read that they're already breaking records with pre-sales and, projecting just like ungodly huge numbers for the opening weekend. So I think this will certainly shake a lot of people out of their fatigue. That's what I think.
And would you kind of be down for Pyro to get more of the MCU treatment in another show or movie? Because characters are always popping up in other,
They are.
places.
They are. Yeah. You never know what's going to happen. As I said before, I thought Pyro was long since buried. Very excited to see him coming back in this, and who knows? Maybe there's the potential for that at some point. And obviously, I'd love to see Pyro live on as well. I'm a fan just as you are.
Do you have like an idea of like what his story would be if he even got his own spinoff?
As a matter of fact, I do. I won't get too deeply into it, but I have a pitch that I've worked up that I would love to see happen. So yeah, I've got a whole universe built out in my head for him, and I'd love to see something like that happen. It'd be great.
Hopefully we get to see it one day.
Yeah.
I also wanted to talk to you in general about your other works, because you've done a lot of work in television shows like 12 Monkeys, Nikita, Fear the Walking Dead. How has your experience on serialized television shows like those kind of helped you and changed you as an actor?
They're a different medium in that, the way I think of it is, as grand as films are and as epic as they can be, a film really is a short story. Mm-hmm. You really have to tell a very tightly constructed, truncated story in a brief period of time. Maximum 3 hours really is what people are able to sit through. And it can be really potent and it can be fantastic. But what's really great about series is that as a film is a short story, a series is a novel, and you really have a long time to just develop these characters, and the audience is a long time to get to know them and invest with them and fall in love with them, and you can develop all of the relationships that they have, and you can put in all of this detail, all of this nuance that you would have in the experience of reading a novel, and it can really be just an epic experience. And people get attached to series in a very, very deep way because they're living with these characters sometimes over years, right? If you have some of these shows go for like 10 seasons, right? People invest with this, and when that series is over, they're like in grief. They're like mourning somebody who's passed away because those characters are such a part of their life and a part of their family. So that has been something that's been really interesting to experience, is doing something, going that in depth on something, for that length of time. I remember the last episode that we shot of 12 Monkeys. There's a lot of emotional scenes. The finales are generally, a way to say goodbye. And what you would see I know I experienced it myself with all the other cast members. The emotion, it just flowed so freely because we're all feeling it on a real, very real level of saying goodbye, you know, to all these people and these characters that we've spent this time with. So yeah, I think it's just with series, it's really interesting the level of attachment that can develop.